Hello, this is Lawrence of Silicon Valley High School. This video will try to create our first GUI application, and we will show you the step-by-step process on how to come up with one. We will create a simple calculator that looks like this. So we'll have a frame, and we'll have three labels: first, second, and result, three text fields, and five buttons. Okay, the buttons for the addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and a clear button. Right? So what we'll do first is we'll open our text editor and we'll import. Let me enlarge this one. Our AWT package, and then create a class, public class simple calculator. Alright. Let me set up the skeletal structure, my constructor, simple calculator. Okay. A method, a user-defined method that will set up and assemble all of my components. Let's call it launch frame. And of course, our main method, our PSVM, public static void main string args. All right, looks good. Let's save this as simple calculator.java. Let me save it under our folder SVHS. Just to verify, there we go. This is our file right here. All right then. In the previous video, we mentioned that whenever we create our GUI application, we need to consider three things: the components, the containers, and the layout managers. In this GUI app, we have several components and a container. So the container here is called a frame. So let's identify our container and our components. As for our container, we have a private frame F. Alright? For the components, we have three labels, namely label, let's call them L1, L2, and L3. We have three text fields: private text field, TF1, TF2, and TF3. And what else? We also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttons: private button, button add, button sub, button mul, button div, button clear. Giving these variable names a descriptive name will help us understand our code better. Alright, so we have declared all our components and our containers inside our class. The next step is for us to instantiate them inside our constructor. So whenever we call our constructor, let's say simple calculator, SC is equals to use simple calculator, we should be able to instantiate all of this. So how do we instantiate our components and our containers? So let's start with our container. Container components. Okay, so for our container, F is equals to new frame. Now let's check again how our frame looks like. it has a title bar. Okay, so let's try to open our API. I have an offline version of the API here. Okay, looking at AWT package, scrolling down, looking for the frame class. Here we go. So according to the API, let's take a look at the list of constructors. Here we go. We have 4 constructors for the class frame, meaning there are 4 different ways on how to create this frame object. And one of which is a constructor that accepts a string value. The string value now represents the specified title for your frame, or the title bar for your frame. So I guess I'll just use this one. Okay, so I'll say new frame, my first GUI app. So let's check my first GUI app. Yep, that's it. That will be how our frame look like whenever we instantiate our frame object this way. Next, let's instantiate our labels. So for labels, we have 3, first, second, and third. First, second, and result. Okay. So once again, we try to look at the API as a guide on how to create these labels. So we can use a label with a string or a label with a string alignment. Okay, let's just use this one, label with a string. Okay, so I'll say L1 is equals to new label, and then the string will be first, colon, and a space. Copy, paste, oops, paste. So L1, L2, and L3. This will be first, second, and result. All right. What else? I also need to instantiate 3 text fields. So we have 1, 2, 3, but these text fields have initial values in them. So let's check again the API on how to create text fields. Text fields. So here we go. So there are 4 different text field versions that you're seeing right here. I would probably use the 4th one, a text field that has a specified width and a default text. Let's check it out. Here we go, constructor. I'll use this one, the 4th one, the one that has a specified width in columns and a predefined set of text, which is the initial value 0.0. So I would say for text field, right? TF1 new text field, let's say 15, and our initial string value is 0.0. Let me just put a comma right there. Alright, so 0.0 is the initial value of our text field, while 15 is the width value for that specific text field. So let me just copy it and paste it here since we'll be needing 3 of them. Okay, let's change this to TF2 and TF3. Alright, what's next? We still need to create 5 buttons, 1 for each operation. So you'll be needing, okay, all of this, no? Plus, minus, times, divide, and clear. In a way, we call them mnemonics. Okay, but let's not discuss them right about now. Let's just try to create a button for the operations. We say b.button add is equal to new button. Let's check out the API. Button. Let's see. Oh, there you go. Okay, so class button, and we have two constructors. We'll use the second one, okay, that accepts a label. Okay, so I'll say new button, and then the label plus. All right, and then save it, paste, 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 and paste. So let's change the variable names to button add, button sub, button mul, div, and clear. Oops, clear. This should be C divide times minus. All right, here we go. So we have instantiated all of my components and containers inside my constructor. So whenever I call the constructor, all of these objects right here that we have created or instantiated will now be floating in memory. They will look like something like this, floating around on your RAM. Okay? The next step is for us to assemble all of this so that it will look like this. How do we do that? So aside from identifying your container and your components, the next step is for you to identify what layout manager should you use for your container. So whenever you put your components inside your container, it will lay out, it will apply the specified layout manager that you'll be choosing. Now, in cases that you cannot really choose a layout manager that will fit your application, you can also customize your layout manager by creating panels. So let's create 4 panels like this. Okay. Now these panels will be placed on your frame with your labels and text fields and buttons. Okay, so let's create your panels first. So I'll say private panel P1, P2, P3, and P4. And then let's instantiate your panels. P1 is equals to new panel. P2 is equals to new panel. Oops. And I'm too lazy to type, so I'll just do copy paste. P3 and P4. There you go. So after having these panels, okay, we can now put our labels to the panels. So how do I? All right. So I'll put label 1 to panel 1. I'm going to do the same with label text field 1 to panel 1. So I'll call this as panel 1. I'll call this as panel 2. This one will be called as panel 3, and this one will be called as panel 4. So label 2 will be placed in panel 2. Text field 2 will be placed in panel 2. Label 3 will be placed to panel 3. Text field 3 to panel 3. So labels 1, 2, and 3 will be placed in panels 1, 2, and 3. Text fields 1, 2, and 3 will be placed on panels 1, 2, and 3. Now, panels will be use the default layout manager for panels, which is flow layout. All right. Now, as for the buttons, we'll do the same. Button add will be placed in panel 4. Button sub, mul, div, and clear. So all buttons will be placed to panel number 4. All right, let's try that one. So we're going to place all components to their respective panels. Use the default layout manager of the panel, which is flow layout. All right, let's do this. So panel 1, we're going to add label 1. Panel 1, we're going to add text field 1. Right? So that's what we're doing right here. And then we will do the same for panel 2 and panel 3. So with that, we'll copy this and paste it here. Panel 2 and panel 3. And for panel 4, we're going to add our buttons. So we're going to put button add, button sub, going to add button mul, button div, and lastly p4.add button clear. All right. So we have 4 panels. We've declared our 4 panels, instantiated our 4 panels, and added all components to all 4 panels. The next step for us to do is to put all of these panels inside our frame. Okay? For our frame, we will use grid layout, okay, 4 rows and 1 column. So we're going to put panel 1 right here. Oops. All right, and then sorry, should have used shapes. And then going to put panel 2 right here. All right, insert. Going to put panel 3 right about here. And lastly, I'm going to put panel 4 on the last part. Alright, so we're going to put all panels inside our frame utilizing or using grid layout as our layout manager for the frame. For the panels, we did not change the layout manager, we simply use the default layout manager for the panel. But for the frame, change the layout manager to grid layout 4 row and 1 column. In order for us to do that, we say f dot set layout new grid layout 4 row 1 column. Alright, and then we start adding our panels. F dot add P2, then we do a quick copy and paste. F dot add P3 and P4. Alright, and after adding all of our components inside our respective panels and putting all our panels inside the frame, the next and the almost final step is for us to set the size. We say f.pack if you don't want to think about the size anymore. So pack means the frame will be created and the frame should be large enough to accommodate all of the components that was placed inside it. So if you've only created a frame and a button and you place the button inside that single frame, chances are the frame will be very small. But with all of the components that we have declared and added inside the frame, I think it will be fairly large enough uh, to accommodate, or it will create a frame large enough to accommodate all of these components placed inside our frame. Okay, so that's the use of pack. Another thing is, remember that frames by default are invisible, so we need to set the visibility by calling set visible and passing it as and pass a value of true to be able to for us to see it. Okay, and then we call the method using sc.launch frame to be able to call this method that we just finished writing. So save it. Let's try to compile it. Simple calculator.java. Clean compile. Let's try to run it. And there we go. So this is our first GUI app. Remember that this is just a GUI app. No event handling was written just yet. Not even the close button will function because this requires an actual line of code to be able to close a GUI app. Okay, so for now, let's settle with Control C to terminate our application. Okay, so just a quick recap. What we've created right now is a GUI app for our calculator. We initially declared all of our containers and components, and inside our constructor, we instantiated each one, and inside our launch frame, we've added all components inside their respective container towards each panel, and then lastly, we set the layout manager of the panel and we've added all the panels inside the frame. And then set the visibility to true. And then we call the constructor and then we call the method. Sorry about that. So in our next video tutorial, we will try to discuss event handling techniques. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Happy coding!